Hello everyone, welcome back. You're watching Empyrion Galactic Survival episode 173. I'm Enigmius, and today we're continuing where we left off in the last episode. We're building our flying saucer, which is as much an exercise in circles as it is in shipbuilding. And the whole idea we started in the last episode was, if we're going to do a flying saucer and it's going to be round, I want it to be as close to perfectly round as I can make it. So we did a little magic with screenshots and Photoshop overlays just to put a circle over it so we could see how our voxel based square cube builder circle compares to an actual real circle when you put them basically one on top of the other. So we did that. We were able to modify the original circle, the outer perimeter of the ship, and now we're worrying about the upper and the lower sections of the ship. We basically got the main circle defined, and it would be really easy from here if I just wanted like a flat top and bottom, but that would be excruciatingly dull. So we're instead going for a slightly curved effect, like a domed or a bulging effect, depending on how you want to describe it. So the first part of that, starting to have everything sweep back towards the center, is fairly easy to put into place because we've got that large circle there as a guide, and it's not difficult to kind of build off of that and create a circle that's basically working with almost the same diameter, but it's just a little bit higher up. And instead of using blocks basically at a 90 degree, like a perpendicular to the ground kind of thing, we're just using slope blocks to make everything look like it's sweeping back the way that it should. Where we start to run into a less straightforward scenario is when we start looking at the next circle in that process, because if we're going to do this curved sort of thing, we start off by creating the outer circle, and then we've got a little bit of a flat spot, and then we have another circle just a little bit farther in. You can see we're starting to work on that now. And basically I used plots.co.uk again for the layout of this specific circle because it's too far away from the outer perimeter to be able to get a good read on how everything should be laid out. And in this case, as I mentioned in the last episode, I would rather get a geometrically viable circle in place that's based on a real circle and is just stripped down for voxel purposes, than to do it by hand and have it a little bit off here and a little bit off there and just throw the whole thing off. So that's what I did. We used plots.co.uk, and I started filling in this top section, which is not to say that we're done with it, but you can see we've got that sort of rounded profile that we're looking for along the top. It's not, of course, by any means perfect, but it is giving that impression that there's more going on than just what you see with the flat disc and the circle on the outer perimeter. And then it's having set it up on one side, it's much quicker and easier to put it in place on the other side, especially with mirror mode. It almost feels like we aren't doing enough. Like I kept looking around, sort of expecting to find that I was doing something wrong because it was going together so quickly. But then based on what you're seeing here, I kind of had a feeling early on that it wasn't going to be close to the real circle, because we had those 45-degree lines on the corner of the circle like we had in the last episode. Relative to the axis of the ship, we've got these lines. They're single blocks that go at 45-degree angles in the corners of the circle, and left like that, it's passable as a circle, but by no stretch of the imagination is it anywhere near perfect. And again, I use the word perfect loosely because obviously we're not going to get perfect in this particular scenario. The goal is basically as close as we can possibly get. If I can arrange it so that the vast majority of the blocks that are on the perimeter of any of these circles is also touching the circle that we use as an overlay after we take a screenshot, that to me is good enough. And now if you missed the last episode and you're wondering what the hell I'm talking about with all this overlays and screenshots and stuff like that, once we finish getting all of these bits and pieces more or less finished off, we're going to take a look. The first comparison between what we've got based on the circle we got from plots and what we need based on the circle that we draw with Photoshop. So it's amazing how quickly this all is coming together, but the devil is in the details on this build, perhaps more so than any of the others that I've done. So you can see we go up in the sky and we look down and we can get an idea of the actual shape of things, but it's not until we take that screenshot and overlay it with the red circle there that you can see right in those corners is where it doesn't extend out far enough, and that's easy enough to fix. But what I ended up doing to make it a little bit easier to see what was going on is I textured that grouping of blocks around that outer perimeter with the flat texture, so it shows up in the blue that you see here, so that we can see things a little bit easier than having the gray on gray background kind of scenario. So we start off with this circle that's pretty darn close to a circle, but in order to adjust it, we have to push those corners out a little bit so that they reach the red circle overlay. And then I decided that it might be easier to kind of illustrate just how small the change is and how big of a difference it makes if I were to try and get both of the screenshots around the same size and lined up as well as I possibly could, and then just switch them back and forth so that you can see. It's not a big change. It didn't take long. It wasn't difficult. It wasn't mentally taxing. It was just a thing that I was able to do and get done. And now that middle circle that's helping to define that curve along the top and the bottom is done. It's good. We're ready to move on. So one of the other details that I wanted to put into place, and I couldn't tell you exactly why, it just seemed at least somewhat appropriate for a flying saucer, was this sort of spoke kind of thing, if that's the appropriate imagery. Basically lines starting from the center and extending out in the 4 cardinal directions, and then the 45-degree equivalents all the way around. I did it on top, and then I forgot that I had done it on top, and consequently I have to show you the execution phase on the underside. But it wasn't difficult. Again, it just took a little bit of time, and when it came to the 45-degree spokes on the underside, I had to go up and check what I did on top just to make sure everything lined up. But now I'm in a good position to start detailing. All of the major structural work is done, so I can start detailing and getting everything sort of laid out in the way that's reflecting what I have in mind for a flying saucer. Now that the circles are taken care of, I can have a little bit more fun in terms of glass, probably in certain places, the placement of the weapons, the placement of the thrusters, so that the final version of the ship on the outside has the look that I'm going for, has all of the function that you would want out of a reasonable capital vessel, and then I can do some detailing on the interior, and before you know it, this whole thing will be done and ready to go. So I'll leave you with just a couple of minutes here. You can watch how the whole thing starts to look when we texture it all with the shiny metal texture. It's not to say that this will be the final texture that we use in any or all of the ship, but it was one of those things where, having reached sort of a milestone in the construction phase, it was kind of fun to texture it up a little bit and see how it ends up looking. So the next episode, we're basically going to carry on from where we left off here. If you want to be notified about that episode and future episodes in this and other series, the easiest way to do that is to subscribe to my channel or follow me on social media. Links for social media are in the information section below the video. Feel free to leave your comments and feedback. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.